that the Apostle Paul went through. All right, we look at the journey that the Apostle Paul went through when setting up the congregation in Philippi. So we're looking at Acts chapter 15 and 16, at a series of different things that the Apostle Paul had to go through in his journey towards joy. We've already gone through verses 1 to 29 of Acts 15. We looked at the unignorable doctrinal dispute. We looked at different ways in which we should deal with such disputes. We then went into the unfulfilled plan and how to deal with unfulfilled plans, how to deal with disappointments in our lives. And we're now at item 3, an unresolved interpersonal dispute. And the point that we made there is that when we have unresolved disputes in our lives, these disputes can affect us very badly. They can affect us mentally, they can affect us emotionally, they can affect us even physically. And sometimes if we allow it, these unresolved interpersonal disputes can even affect us spiritually. So we have to figure out how to deal with these kinds of interpersonal disputes in our journey towards joy. And so we saw that in Acts chapter 15, verses 37 to 41, the Apostle Paul went through such a dispute with Barnabas. Background, so we covered all this, is just review. Background, we found that Paul and Barnabas had had a long and fruitful relationship. We traced the relationship through the book of Acts. We saw that this was not a passing acquaintance. It was a deep relationship based on mentorship and ministry. But we found in the passage that they had a dispute, which the Bible says turned into a sharp disagreement. That's a Greek word there. It means a provocation, which literally jabs or cut someone so that they must respond. We asked the question last class, who was right, who was wrong? Was it Paul? Was it Barnabas? The answer that we gave, after some amount of speculation, the answer that we gave is that we do not know. The Bible does not tell us who is wrong. Yes, we can come up with our own ideas, but the Bible does not tell us who was wrong. We have to work with what we've been told in the scriptures and see what lessons we can learn without making any assumptions. We drew some lessons for that for ourselves. And remember, we highlighted that broader lessons for bystanders. So these are persons who are not necessarily involved in the dispute, in the interpersonal conflict themselves, but who are looking on. The lesson that we learned there is that we should do the same when we see interpersonal conflicts. Don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Don't be too quick to take sides or to make judgments based on your previous knowledge of the people. There's a human tendency when there are gaps in knowledge to try and fill those gaps. Even if we don't have the information to fill the gaps, we try and fill it in with what we know. That's not what we should do. We should be quick to acknowledge that we don't know everything about the situation and reserve our opinions for either if or when we get the facts. And we made a point that too often we see, whether in the church or at work or at school or anywhere else, problems get escalated because people line up behind people. People line up behind their friends, people line up behind who they think is right, and oftentimes they don't have all the information. We need to stop that. We need to stop that. Sister Grenell, your hand is up? Okay. So then we went on now into the lessons for dealing with unresolved interpersonal disputes. And the first lesson, we said that there were 3 sets of lessons that we're going to go through in this class. Talk and try, leave and cleave, grow, go, grow, and glow. 3 lessons. My fingers right? Talk and try, leave and cleave, go, grow, and glow. And we're at talk and try. We just finished talk and try in Tuesday's class. Talk and try was taken from Acts 15, verses 37 to 39. We saw that Paul and Barnabas had a difference of opinion. We found, though, that the thing didn't start as a sharp dispute. We looked at the Greek words, which showed us the genomai word, if you remember from Tuesday's class, which showed us that it transitioned there over time. We went through the background of the relationship to show that these brothers had too much to lose to just throw their relationship without trying to talk it through, without trying to make it work. We know the end result with Paul and Barnabas, in that they separated ways. But despite the end result, let us not forget that they started off by talking and trying to come to a resolution. It's important. It's important. Listen, too often we get to the point of parting ways refusing to talk to each other, or even worse, playing a hypocrite, pretending all is well, when inside you have written off the relationship or the person before a serious attempt is made to talk through the matter and to try to resolve the issue. We need to tell people how we're feeling. We need to give them a chance to explain themselves and to explain their actions. We made a point in Tuesday's class that too often we assume that they should know. They should understand how I'm feeling. How could you do this to me and not know it has hurt me? I don't need to tell you this. You're supposed to know. Or we're saying, well, sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people don't know. So you have to try and give people the benefit of the doubt. Try and give people the benefit of the doubt. Give them a chance to explain. Well, let us explain to them how we are feeling and give them a chance to explain themselves or their actions to us. And then we'll ask a series of questions. So remember, we said this class is not just for head knowledge, it's for application. So here are the application questions. Is there anyone who I need to talk to try with now? Are there any relationships that you didn't give a fair chance because you weren't open with your feelings? Because you distanced yourself before giving someone an opportunity to explain themselves? Are there any individuals who you have kept at arm's length because of preconceived notions about them? Yeah, you see them, you think this about them, or you see them, you've heard something about them, and you don't really want to mix with them too tough, so you keep them at a distance. You haven't tested it for yourself, but you're keeping them at a distance all the same. Could we be robbing ourselves of joy by not at least trying to work out these situations? Remember when we read the background to the book of Philippians, we look at how Paul was speaking about the brethren in Philippi. You could see that relationship with those brethren was a great source of joy for him. But is it that sometimes we rob ourselves of joy by not trying to talk and try through difficult situations? That's where we left it in last class. We want to move on now to our second set of lessons, that is leave and cleave. So before we go there, let's just remind ourselves of the passage, please. Could someone read from me Acts chapter 15, verses 37 to 41? Let me just check. Brother Smith, persons online, hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Acts chapter 15, verses 37 to 41. When you find it, you can read it for me. Acts 15, 37 to 41. Don't be shy to volunteer to read. Thanks, Natasha.
Acts 15, verse 37 to 41. Now Barnabas was determined to take with them John called Mark, but Paul insisted that they should not take with them the one who had departed from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. Then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and departed, being commended by the brethren to the grace of God. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches.
Thank you very much, Natasha. So, see from verses 39 to 40, that it turned into such a sharp disagreement that they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark and went away to Cyprus. Paul chose Silas. There comes a point, brethren and friends, there comes a point when our disagreements, when our problems with others can become so sharp that it is better to separate from them rather than to continue to fight it out. I say this resident psychologist not in his head, so I feel a little bit more comfortable because I must admit, Brother Casey, I was a little bit nervous that you're going to take me on with this one. All right. So there comes a point when our disagreements, our problems with others become so sharp that it is better to separate from them rather than to continue to fight it out. But that's the key question there. That's the key question there. How do we know when we get to that point? How do we know? Because remember the first point. Don't forget the first point. The first point was to talk and try. And we emphasize that point. Don't be too quick to get here. Right? We must talk and try. We must try, we must try, we must try, and trying involves talking. However, sometimes you're going to get to this point. And the question is, how do you know when you get here? What pushed Paul and Barnabas to make what must have been a hard decision for them? When we think back to their background, they had a whole heap of history, good, positive history. What made them get to that point? Let's go back then to the sharp disagreement. Remember the Greek word that we highlighted earlier? A provocation which literally jabs or cuts someone so that they must respond. Goes on to say that that word parokisno, para there means alongside, oxis means a sharp edge. Properly it means to cut alongside, to incite or jab someone, to stimulate their feelings or emotions, to become emotionally provoked, upset, roused and anger, as personally getting someone figuratively to provoke feelings to spur someone to action. The idea here, the para there is important. This whole jabbing or stabbing or sticking and provoking to action comes because the persons are alongside. The closeness of the contact, the closeness of the relationship. It wasn't just that they had a difference of opinion. Important point. It wasn't just that they had a difference of opinion. Sister Grenda, me and you can have a difference of opinion. Yeah? And you and I can continue to be wonderfully good friends. It wasn't just that they had a difference of opinion. People can agree to disagree without being disagreeable and continue to walk and work together. All right? So we're not going to try and trivialize what they were going through. The reference with Paul and Barnabas was that their disagreement was provoking them into anger. The disagreement was provoking them into anger. It was spurring on negative emotions in them. By the other person, remember the para, by the other person being so close to them, alongside them, the provocation was so great that they felt they had to respond. So the provocation was spurring them to action, and that action may not have been positive. You see the difference between that and a difference of opinion? Yeah? So in that context, it was better for them, so what is in parentheses there, in brackets, it was better for them after having talked and tried to create a resolution. Never forget that. So after having talked and tried, it was better for them to separate from each other, to leave each other's company. Why? Because the cost of staying together outweighed the benefit. The cost of staying together outweighed the benefit. And if we have relationships, I see you still, I'm just finishing the sentence, thank you. If you have relationships in which there are unresolved disputes, that is just stabbing us, choking us, irking us, that is causing us to act in ways that we wouldn't normally act. That's causing us to say things that we wouldn't normally say. That's causing us to respond in ways that we wouldn't normally respond. Anybody can relate to what I say? Yeah, after you say what you say, you wish, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I just go to church yesterday. You can relate? Yeah? If you have those kinds of relationships, and it's not a one-time thing, it happens over and over and over again. And we try and we try and we try and we talk and we try and we talk. There may come a time when we have to ask, is the cost of staying together with that person, being friends with that person, greater than the benefit that I am getting from it? Yes, Stephen?
It's all right, David, you covered it.
Covered 30? All right. What are the lessons for me here? There are some relationships that may be too toxic for me to stay in, and I need to leave. There are some relationships that may be too toxic for me to stay in, and I need to leave. Check this point here now. It doesn't mean necessarily that the other person is a bad person, or that I am right or they are wrong. Remember when we looked at Paul and Barnabas, the Bible never said who was right or who was wrong. Never said either one of them were terrible people. We're not saying that. We're not saying that. It just means that the cost of my staying with or around that person is greater than the benefit to my soul, to my mental well-being, my state of being peace-filled and joyful. And so I have to ask myself the question, is the cost greater than the benefit? Look at this list here. If someone or some situation is continuously causing me to be angry or depressed or sad or questioning my worth or sinful or frustrated or anxious or distracted from God, or you feeling whatever your blank is. If someone or some relationship is continually evoking these types of emotions, of these types of responses in me, then I must, keyword there being must, after talking and trying, I'm going to do like Brother Andre. After talking and trying, I must be prepared to leave. And that's hard for some of us, you know. And it's hard for some relationships. And I want to believe it would have been hard for Paul and Barnabas. Remember, Barnabas was the first one that welcomed Paul into the church. Barnabas was the one that took Paul around and introduced him to the Christians and said, don't be afraid of him. He has changed. Barnabas was the one that went on the first missionary journey together. They were tight. Barnabas was Paul's mentor. They were tight. But if the relationship is constantly juking you, constantly stabbing you, constantly causing you to be any of these things, there must come a point in time where I am prepared to leave. Because it's better to separate from a person or separate from a situation than to be constantly being put in a situation like that. So it reminds me of the passage that if your right eye causes you to sin, then you must pluck it out. Is it just pluck it out and hold it in your hand? Pluck it out or what? Cast it away. Get it away. Yes, Brother Andrew.
Would you say that it is equally important that if and when that separation is made, that you don't remain bitter?
So come there. There are two things the two clauses that come with the leave part. Remember, it's leave and cleave. And then the next point is go, grow, and glow. The glow part is where you're going to now. So we're getting there. We might not get there today, but we're going to get there. Yes, Stephen.
Yes, David, I wanted to ask if the leaving has anything to do with leaving the person or leaving the circumstance. Given that Paul and Barnabas, their impasse was essentially that there was a need to go on a mission. So they had to go somewhere. And Paul was like, if we're going there, we're not going with John Mark. And Barnabas was like, I am not going if John Mark is not going. And because they had to go, it ended up being, all right, since we can't come to an agreement, we are separating. Is it that separation was, I can't deal with Barnabas anymore, I can't deal with Paul anymore, but more of a, to fulfill this requirement, it requires a separation? Or is it?
Sorry,
I'm going to say something.
Sorry, continue.
Or was it the presence of this individual is making this interaction an impossibility?
A very good question, Stephen. I think the end result that we're looking for is to get rid of those things on the screen. Yeah, whichever one of those things apply, okay, or if the fill in the blank applies. So
whatever course that leads to no anger or depression or sadness or questioning, once that is achieved, then that is the okay, I get you.
Right. So
Thank
if
you.
changing the situation, so you, Sister Grenell again, Sister Grenell and I might be the best of friends, but once we get into a situation where she and I count money together, yeah, once money come into it, me and Sister Grenell cannot get along. So I stop counting money with Sister Grenell, and then we'll continue being great friends.
Okay, that cleared it up.
However, but I also want to say, sometimes because friendships and stuff are so great and relationships are so great, I might think it's a situation. So I changed the money counting situation with Sister Grenell, and Sister Grenell still jabbing me and inciting me to these things. Yeah? Then I realized that it's not the money counting situation. It really is Sister Grenell. Sorry, Sister Grenell. Yeah, I chose you because I know it's not so it go. Right? Right? And so I really may have to deal with the individual as opposed to the situation. Right? And so just remember the end result that we're trying to get this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, good. Brother Smith.
Okay, maybe not directly from the Paul and Barnabas situation, but I hear the talk and try, and I agree with it. I'm just wondering if there's not another element though, which is the self-examination, because sometimes we are super sensitive, and I'm just wondering if that is not a possibility as well, that some of that cutting can be from our sensitivity. And as we go forward, is there not a consideration that we should be looking internally as well? Yeah, so while we're talking, while we're trying, I'm just suggesting that some of that trying could be to see if our perspective is the right one. If our perspective, if we're coming from a right place as we look at the situation. So that is part of the trying.
Excellent point. Excellent point, Brother Smith. I can't agree with you more. So yes, as we go through all of these things, one of the foundational things that we have to look at is ourselves. We have to examine ourselves. I may be too sensitive. I may be overreacting to what the person did. And a good hint, you know, my mother used to tell me, when I used to get in arguments with my sister over both of them, she used to tell me, they can't always be wrong and you always right. Yeah, something must be wrong. You check yourself. And I think as a part of it, what Smith is saying that, you know, suppose you have this interpersonal relationship problem with Sister Grenell, and you run this Sister Grenell and you start talking to Sister Paula, and it's the same thing come up with Sister Paula, and you read Sister Paula and you start talking to Sister them and you say, then, what's the common factor there? All right? We have to start thinking. So yes, Brother Smith, we have to examine ourselves. 100% agree with you. There's one little footnote. Be careful that with the introspection, particularly if we're dealing with persons who are very heavily influential in our lives, with the introspection, I remember a talk that you and Brother Andre gave about gaslighting. Be very careful that the introspection doesn't lead you, because of trying to accommodate the other person and accommodate what they're saying, to start questioning your worth. I don't know if I've made myself clear there, but just be very clear. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to me in terms of a senior person at work. You talk to the person every time you leave the person. And my example, every time you leave the person's office, you feel down. Every time you leave the person's office, you feel, say, why am I working here? You know, why? You know, should I be in this job? Every single time. But because of the respect I have for the person, I examine what they say, I look at what they say, and things like that. Until it came to a point where the man literally was saying, boy, I'm looking to see if Sister Marjorie is here, because she knows what I'm talking about. The man literally said, boy, you know, you can't say you have done anything until you have reached this level. And that level that he is pointing out, him not reach and nobody near him ever reach. And I said, but no, this don't make no sense. This don't make no sense. So the introspection is critical, but be careful though. There are some people that are so influential in your life that the introspection can sometimes lead you to a point of questioning your own worth. I don't know if I use the term gaslighting right in that context for the Andre, but it's an idea that you guys had put into my brain. We'll have to be very careful with this. All right.
Amen.
Old hand, Stephen, or new hand? Hold on. All right.
I didn't realize.
No, man, no problem. All right, so where is that? So we need to examine, Sister Debbie, I didn't say that.
In terms of leaving the relationship or leaving the person.
Right, up to you. Sister Debbie.
In terms of leaving the relationship or leaving the person, because they make you angry or maybe depressed or sad. Could it be that your leaving would have an adverse effect on the person? Could it be that you are the anchor or you're the person who is there to support that person? And you may have to consider not just self-gratification, but maybe being sacrificial, self-sacrificing in order to support the person.
That's a critical question, Sister David. That's a question that I just want to say, Brother Andre, and just hand it over. But let me try first, and then when I fail, Brother Andre can jump in. Yeah? Yes and no. I think that's the best answer that I can give. Yes and no. Like what we said in the previous slide, there has to come a cutoff point. Yeah? You can sacrifice yourself to the point where you even sacrifice your soul, you know. And at that point, you know, say, this can't work. Right? So an example is just really fresh in my mind now in terms of a young lady who was in a relationship with a young man. And the young man was very, very bad for her. And she knew he was bad for her. Everybody around her knew he was bad for her. It was just clear. And the argument the young lady gave me was almost word for word what you just told me. I'm his anchor. If he's doing so badly now, what will happen to him after I leave? Yeah? That can't work. That can't work. At some point in time, each person has to be accountable for their own self. So you can be sacrificial up to a point, but you have to be careful that if the thing is creating these problems in you, if it is causing you to sin, right? If it is causing you not to be where God wants you to be, and that's a key point, you know. If it is causing you not to be in the state that God wants you to be in, then at some point you have to tell the person, boy, you have to sort out yourself. You have to go find some other anchor, or better yet, develop your own. That's the best answer I can give, but the expert shall speak. But Andre.
I have a passage.
Even better.
2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 23 to 25 possibly. Maybe the whole of it to 26. I can read, go ahead. But foolish and unlearned questions avoid, knowing that they do gender strifes. And so for me right away, this is an instruction to everybody. So even the person who is offending you, sometimes we see this and it's an instruction to everybody. So whether you are on the receiving end or you're on the giving end, your responsibility is to ensure that you do not become the offense. Okay, so you must know if you find that somebody is behaving that way, you have a responsibility in how you're going to react to it. And don't let them get you to that place, as you have mentioned, where all these things is happening to you. But I think it went on, verse 24 says, and the servant of the Lord must not strive. Some version says quarrel, or be quarrelsome, but be gentle unto all, able to teach the patient. Verse 25, in meekness, correcting or instructing those who oppose themselves, if God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth. And that they rather may recover themselves out of the snare of the devil, who are taken captive by him at his will. And so what this kind of also says to me is that Satan can ensnare you too, you know. And so if he's ensnaring you, you have to be careful that that kind of bad treatment, you don't fall prey to it. You don't start to mirror the bad treatment, but you have a responsibility to protect yourself. Don't become them, clearly, but to protect yourself.
Amen. Amen. It reminds me of the setup when you go on the airplane. Let's say when the oxygen mask drop down, you put on your mask first, even before you put on the mask of a child or an elderly or disabled person, because you have to save yourself first. It's so hard to say, but That's it. That's it. All right, Sister Smith.
Yes, good afternoon. I was wondering, in a dispute that gets very sharp and heated, our reasoning and our rationale is not, we're not thinking right. Wouldn't it be best to get another person as a mediator to avoid the separation?
Certainly.
I was wondering, yeah.
Certainly. In the talk and try phase, definitely. Definitely. And remember that I want to emphasize the talk and try, not like a quick thing, you know. Oh, I talked to you 2 times, it never worked. This is a process. It's a process you're really going to seriously try and talk it through. And if talking through means getting a counselor involved, getting a mediator involved, getting a senior person in the church involved, definitely help. Arbitration helps. Wisdom from other persons help. Definitely, definitely, definitely. But there are circumstances that even after all of those things are tried, there is no resolution. There's still no resolution after all of those things are tried. What do? Keep on in the same cycle over while these things keep on happening. At some point in time, we see from the example, Paul and Barnabas, at some point in time, it's necessary to leave and cleave. Not a decision. I don't know how I'm going to emphasize this more, but please hear me. Not a decision is to be taken lightly. It is not a decision that is to be taken lightly. The talk and try is critical. However, certain circumstances prevail. It's a decision that should be taken. Should be taken. Well, there you go. It's not an easy decision to make, particularly for relationships that have history. Yeah? But sometimes it's necessary for your very survival. Spiritual survival, and sometimes even physical survival. Yeah? It's important for your well-being, your mental well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being as well. Sometimes we just have to separate ourselves. Check this out though. It's an important part of the story with Paul and Barnabas that we tend to miss. Just like how we tend to miss the talk and try part, sometimes we tend to miss this latter part here. Did Paul and Barnabas only leave? Did they just separate just so? No. In leaving, they also cleaved. In leaving, they also cleaved. What do I mean by this? Look back at verses 39 to 40. Take a careful look at it. Bible says, and Barnabas did what? What do you see it? Verse 39, and Barnabas did what? Barnabas took Mark with him, and he sailed away to Cyprus. It says, but Paul did what? Chose Silas. So yes, they separated, but they did not go off by themselves. They separated, but they did not go off by themselves. You go down to Acts 16, 1-3, you also see right after 15, Paul also took Timothy with him. Paul also took Timothy with him. What's the point? Sometimes when we leave a difficult relationship, when we separate from a troubling interpersonal situation, we want to just be alone. Anybody can relate to that? You just want to go hide. You just want to just lock up in a dark room and be with yourself and your feelings. Right? And you're just wrapped up into it. We tend to go into withdrawal. Sometimes maybe we even go into isolation. True? Not true? Yes? I've seen some nuns? Yes. All right. Dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Why? Because that is when we become easy prey for the devil. That is when we become easy prey for the devil. The devil is a roaring lion seeking after whom he can devour. I remember we did this in a class before. We think of a pack of animals and the lion is on the hunt. Which animals does he get first? The ones who are straying, the ones who are by themselves, the ones who are to the back of the pack, not the ones in the middle of the pack. When we are alone, when we are down, when our heart is broken, when we're feeling betrayed, when we're feeling disappointed, all of those things, putting all of those adjectives, Natasha, when we're feeling that way, that is when the devil strikes. That is when the devil strikes, and we have to be very careful. Nature abhors a vacuum. We're all familiar with the Matthew chapter 12 passage where it says that you get rid of the demons. Yeah, you get rid of the demon and you leave this place empty. You're going to come back with 7 of them friends and take over. Familiar with that passage, right? Yeah? If you're not to the reference there, you can read it. Right? Nature abhors a vacuum. If we leave an empty space in our lives without intentionally filling it, it is going to be filled. Something going to fill it. Right? You clean the room nice and clean, and you don't use it. You come back and you check, you find it full of dust, full of mites, full of lizard, cockroach, and the works. Something going to fill an empty space. Something going to fill an empty space. Oftentimes, it's going to be filled by something or someone worse than what we had removed in the first place. Yes? Well, Andre, you're saying something in line with this, or you kind of have a little point I want to add, right? All right, go on, you go ahead. Let me, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think there's a significance where they went.
Stick up in there. Hold it. I think I might be touching something similar. That's what I think. Right? So we have to fill the vacuum. When we're leaving, don't just leave and lock up yourself in a little corner. So what am I saying? It's important here to note what I am not saying. All right? Please pay attention to what I am not saying. All right. What am I not saying? I am not saying that we should rush from one relationship to another. Amen? Yes, so somebody break your heart, somebody terrible has treated you terribly, toxic, you decide you're going to get them out. Yes, leave, get them out, but not find the next one. Two days down the road, you give yourself a little time to breathe. So we're not saying rush from one relationship to the other. So we're saying don't believe. I say, boy, Brother David, I must cleave in us. So let me hurry up and go cleave. That's not what I am saying, brethren and friends. Right? But are clear on that? Yes? All right. Eh? No rebounding, Brother Andre says. Thank you for the right term. No rebound relationships. That's not what we're saying. I'm not saying that we should try to replace one person with another. I'm not saying that there's some relations that you can't replace. Supposing this, God forbid, we're talking about a relationship with a child. And that relationship with a child, probably a grown child, has become toxic. You can't replace that person. So I'm not saying you should try to replace one relationship with another. Recipe for disaster. Not going to work. So please, at the cleaving there, we're not talking about these kinds of things. What am I saying? When we leave, we should also cleave. But cleave to what? Cleave to who? We should cleave to the church. We should cleave to the church. We should cleave to other Christian brethren. Somebody going to ask me now, but what if the problem is with somebody in the church? Well, the church is made up of a collection of people. So if one, don't use one blanket to cover everybody. So if one Christian is giving you a problem, as they will, so I'm not going up here to try to pretend it's all wonderful and perfect in the church. There are interpersonal disputes right there in the church. So if a person in the church gives you a problem, don't write off and say, such church people stay. But no, somebody shouldn't mix up with church people. No. Cleave to the church, cleave to other brethren. It doesn't have to be a BFF type of relationship. Yeah? Anybody in here too old to know what BFF is? All right, good. So it doesn't have to be a BFF type of relationship. It doesn't really even have to be a close, chummy type of friendship. It only has to be a relationship or a partnership that will be healthy, beneficial to you in your walk with God. Now, it might evolve into that later on down, Who knows? I don't know. It may not, right? But the point is what we're trying to avoid is putting yourself in an isolated situation where the devil can strike. Find relationships that can be beneficial to you in your walk with Christ. God doesn't want us to be withdrawn and isolated from the church. When we get disappointed with others, when we have to separate from others, there's a tendency to want to insulate ourselves from people, just generally people, as a protective mechanism. True or not true? When I can relate to that? You just want to cut off, right? God is showing us from this example that we should not only leave, but we should also cleave. We should also cleave. But in cleaving, we must cleave carefully. Cleave carefully. Let us join with people who will strengthen us spiritually, who will keep us focused on God, who will keep us focused on God's work. Let us not put ourselves into a worse situation than where we're coming from. Make sense so far? Make sense? Brother, online, you still with me? Yes, no, maybe so?
Yes, sir.
All right. So as usual, we'll ask some questions of ourselves. Am I in a relationship or a situation that despite all my talking, am I in a situation that despite all my talking and trying is causing me mental, emotional, physical, or spiritual harm? I'm the only one that can answer that for myself. Sister Paula, you're the only one that can answer it for yourself. Yeah? And don't classify this into any particular type of relationship. It could be church, it could be husband and wife, it could be children and parents, it could be friends, it could be co-worker. Whatever it is, we have to ask ourselves that question. Have I weighed the cost versus the benefit of staying in that relationship or that situation? And having done so, have I asked myself the question, is it time for me to leave? Is it time for me to leave? If I've done that and I have left and I've dealt with it, am I now in a position where I have withdrawn and become isolated from the church or from people in the church? Am I currently in that state now, whereby I'm just by my little self, in my little corner, don't say nothing to me, and I will heal by myself? Am I there now? Am I trying to walk the Christian journey alone? Am I trying to walk this Christian journey alone? I know I've tried it numerous times. If I'm to be frank, confession is good for the soul. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's not how it was designed. That's not how it was designed. We can try it, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way, right? Am I trying to walk the Christian journey alone? Do I need to cleave to whom? To strong, mature Christians who will help to strengthen me. Do I need to cleave to strong, mature Christians who will help to strengthen me? Now, part of that, sometimes you wonder, but I've heard Brother Smith preach a lesson on the tyranny of the how. I'll get caught up in how am I going to find these mature Christians? How am I? Sometimes it's a matter of just join a benevolence group. You might find someone there to talk to. Yeah? Join an evangelism group. Yeah? Pick up the phone and call somebody. I don't know how you're going to do it. You will find something that fits in with your personality. But the point is you have to try something. You have to try something. It doesn't make any sense continuing in the same thing over and over again. Remember, it's an unresolved interpersonal dispute we're talking about. Something that just stays there and needles us and jukes us and jabs us month after month, year after year, keeps on going. Have to do something about it, because that is one of the things that robs us of our joy, right? Those are the questions, brethren. Those are the questions that we have to pause and give some serious time thinking about, reflecting on, praying about. All right, we're going to pause here. We're going to stop, not pause, we're going to stop here for today's Bible class. We have a little bit of homework to do in preparation for an exciting tutorial that we're going to have on Tuesday, not for the whole of Tuesday, but for a part of Tuesday's class. Brother Smith is going to lead us on a tutorial on Elihu's approach to Job. Many of you would have seen the email that Brother Smith sent out during the course of this week in relation to the Bible passages. So the homework is simply to read Job chapter 33 and chapter 34. Read Job chapter 33 and 34, related to the lessons that we have been learning in our Steps Towards Joy Bible class. And these are the questions Brother Smith wants to answer. Is ally who aligned to what we have learned about disputes, give your thoughts. So we're going to spend about 10 minutes in Tuesday's class where Brother Smith will lead us in this discussion. And then now we'll move on to the last point in this particular sub-lesson. So we spoke about talk and try. We spoke about leave and cleave. The last point is go, grow, and glow. Go, grow, and glow. We'll talk about that last point after we finish the tutorial. I want to stop here. If there are any questions or comments, you can raise them now. Anybody in the room? I see any hands. Anybody on Zoom? Any questions or comments you want to raise? No? All right. If not, we'll just close off. We had 2 birthdays, and I do not remember who those birthdays were. Remember who the birthdays were? Sister Hillary and Sister Donna. And I don't think either of those persons are well, they're not here, and I don't think they're online either. I checked earlier. Just check the participants list. Sister Hillary, Sister Donna, if you're online, you can let us know. No, I'm not seeing them online either. So we want to sing happy birthday today. I'll spare you from that singing. But we will, in our minds, wish them happy birthday, give them a call, and say a prayer for them. Announcements, regular announcements that were made earlier, I won't repeat them. Just encouraging everybody who is here today, please, 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 make an effort to come choose the Bible class, please. If you have found anything worthwhile today, we will continue on the same vein on Tuesday. So please make an effort to come to Tuesday's Bible class. Again, thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for the time that you have spent with us this morning. And we pray that you'll have a great rest of the week. Brother Rowan, anything you want to say before we close off? No? All right, take care, everybody. Thank you. Take care, everybody online. Have a great week. But I don't know why you didn't answer me.